Hey y'all, I'm James Wright. Welcome to my shop. Today we are making a bread knife, and this has the perfect spacing so you can get the exact same slice every time. It's one of those fun little tools that's really simple to make, and we're gonna have some fun with it. So let's dive in and make a bread knife. We're going to be starting this off with some rock maple, the good hard stuff. And I've had this scrap lying around that actually came from a table that I cut apart. And so there's a seam running down the middle of it. I thought this would be a great little piece for it. So we start off by laying this out how long it needs to be. I figure out where the holes need to be. And then I go about a ½ inch either side of the holes, mark the length and where it will be connecting. And then on one end I create another handle. And so we use the circle set to create a bunch of half rounds and basically create this big U shape, but on one end of the U it goes into the handle and goes off straight. You'll see what I'm talking about here in a minute. But we're going to trace out all of the cuts we need to make. I'm going to use a turning saw for a lot of this to go around the corners. In this case I'm actually using a coping saw that I made rather than a turning saw because it's just a little bit easier to use. If you want to see that, I have a full live video on making this saw. It's relatively quick and simple to do. I'm going to stay away from the line a little ways just because I know I'm not that good, and we're going to cut as close as we can to it in most of the directions. But on several of these we're actually going to come in with the carcass saw and cut across down to it, and then we need to rip this whole thing lengthwise as well. So I don't really care for this being absolutely perfectly smooth because we're going to be doing a lot of the clean out on it, and a chunk of it I'm not actually going to be on any particular line. So I'm going to be using my large rip saw, and I'm going to be ripping down almost all the way. You can see here where the handle indents, I'm actually going to rip in right next to the handle, and then the other one is going to come by the back of the knife blade. I don't know, is this a knife or a saw that we're making? But just going to be coming at this from all different angles, from different saws, different directions, and each one is going to line up with a different characteristic that it can do. Some of them cross-cutting, some of them cutting circles, some of them cutting on flats, and a little bit in between. This one section in the middle, to remove this, I could take the turning saw and cut along it, but the turning saw is not a very straight and accurate saw. And it's not as much fun for me to work with. And so in this case, I decided I'm actually going to chop them out. So I cut down lengths, and then I came in with a chisel. And I chose to actually go against the grain here, and then I could flip around and come back with the grain to cut it off. I could have cut it all with the grain to begin with, but it wouldn't come off quite as easy or as fun. And I found this to be really, really fun to cut it out this way. It's one of my favorite ways to do a round surface. So then for the other ends, we're going to smooth them down to the curve that we have, and then I can come in, bevel down on the curve, and round it down into shape. Before we do that, we're going to flatten out what we can. So the back of the saw, as well as the front of the handle, we can round those with a plane. And then for everything else, we're going to come in with rasps and files and really detail and smooth it out and make the transition from what has been planed to what has been cut. And it's amazing what you can do with a good cabinet rasp and actually shape it down in and get a really nice smooth surface. You start with something really aggressive that gets it into the rough shape you want. Then you come with something finer, and then you can finish it off with a really nice fine file and get a lot of detail on it. And this is really the fun part where things really start to come together. You spend a lot of time fairing out or smoothing out the transitions from one flat surface into the curve or vice versa. And it takes a bit of time and practice to get a nice smooth surface because you have to be moving in two directions at once. The file going across the wood as well as moving side to side along the wood to give you a nice smooth transition. If you keep it one place, it just digs in as like a wide saw. And you want to spend some time and do it a little bit cleaner. We're going to add a chamfer to the back of all of this, and so for the rounded pieces, that means coming in with a file. Flat areas we can do with a plane, just like any normal chamfer, and spend some time and make it look fairly nice and pretty. And we can actually clean this up really easily. Some of the difficult things are like these inside curves. Well, it's sometimes easy just to grab a chisel and go bevel down and carve it out. And you can actually do some pretty good work getting it fairly close, and then you can come into the file and ferret out and smooth out any small imperfections you have, but the chisel can do a lot really quickly, and it's a lot of fun to do that. And so I chose to use that for the whole inside of this, and you can kind of run along it that way. But the spoke shave is always a little bit faster and a little bit cleaner, especially this little cigar. Actually, this is a cigarette smoke shave. This is one from Miller Falls, and it has a rounded bottom, so it allows you to get into very accurate small corners. going to do a little bit of cleanup on all the surfaces, get rid of any marks, and then I left the handle. I didn't chamfer the handle because I want to come through this and I want to round out the handle to make it feel right. And I decided I was originally planning on rounding off the whole end of it, and I thought, let's do a bishop's hat on this. It's one of those fun things that you can just add a little bit of detail to it. So we're just going to round off the sides of this and make it smooth to the touch, starting with something a little more aggressive to get me the shape, and then getting it finer and finer and finer until you're down to something that actually feels good in the hand. And then on the end of this, we're actually going to cut in a V to go along it. And if you look at it from the front and back, it looks like a bishop's hat. This is a bow sander, which I often use for that final detail. Sanding allows the finish to soak in a little bit farther. It actually will draw it and wick it down into the surface because all the pores are full of dust. That'll actually draw it in a little bit farther. So you can see here the V cut I was talking about earlier. You can cut down the middle and then make two saw cuts that come and intersect, and you'll get this little V piece that pops out. And bishop's hat finish is just kind of a nice little detail here. We're going to clean out everything with a small needle file, smooth out the surfaces, give us a nice little transition, round things over, and it's got this fun little appearance. You'll often see this if you're doing with chess pieces or other little details like that, but I thought this would be a fun little place for it. Chance to experiment and try something new. I was thinking about doing some carving on this, but then I thought, no, we're not don't need some carving on this. For the actual saw, we're going to put it in place, and I'm going to put the awl in tight to either end. So when we put the screws in, it'll actually pull this a little bit tight. We don't need a lot of tension on it, we just need a little bit. And I have some small brass screws that we can then put in. So we can pre-drill the hole and then run these down in. And of course they are Phillips because, well, yeah, that's what I could get. I would love to get something with like something other than Phillips. This one you can see is going in an angle because I'm pulling it in tight, and as it goes in farther, it will straighten out a little bit more, but it kind of found its own hole as it went in. But even going on a little bit of an angle, it will pull this over and put some tension onto the blade. Doesn't take much, just a little bit. So we can take that all out and give it a finish. And because this is going to be in contact with food, I'm going to use my homemade boiled linseed oil. This is not the store-bought stuff. It doesn't have any metal dryers in there. It is actually fine to touch and play with. And then we'll add some paste wax after it dries, put it back together, and that's the saw. Now the question is, how exactly does this work? One of the cool things about having the space between the back and the blade is it gives you an exact slice every time. If you've ever cut bread freehand with a knife, you'll know that occasionally you cut it and the slices don't always come out nice and square all the way down. And that's where this saw really shines, is I can grab it and I can put the edge right up against the side of the face, and I can use it as a fence. It keeps the blade the exact distance away, and I get a perfect slice every time. Really nice even slice every time. It's a fence for your bread cutting. Perfect slices of bread every time. That's what I like. There you go, a bread knife. Relatively easy to make, a lot of fun, a good chance to try some new skills. And it's a fun tool to have in the shop. So there you go. A really quick, easy project. I'll show you a link where you can buy these blades online. They're relatively inexpensive. And if you make your own bread, you know the struggle of trying to get that evenly sliced bread where you get basically a doorstop. We want to get nice and clean edges all the time. This acts as a fence so that you're getting the same thickness on every slice. Really kind of fun and a lot of, just a simple project you can do in the shop. So I hope you like this. If you do have any other thoughts or ideas, something I could have done better on this, let me know those down in the comments down below. I do read through all of them and I answer as many as I can. Also, if you want to hit like, share, subscribe, those things really help out the channel and get us in front of more people and help us to grow. So thank you. That means a lot. If you want to take it one step farther, you've got Patreon. Everyone scrolling over on the side, they are patrons on Patreon, quite literally keeping us on the air and keeping the lights on. If you want to take it one other way, you can also go and click the join button down below and become a member here on YouTube. We do have special perks for both patrons and members, wanting to say thank you for supporting the channel and keeping us going. Without you guys, this channel wouldn't exist, so thank you. If you'd like to find out more about them, you can do in the links down below or click the little join button and become a member here. And I think that'll do it for now. Until next time, have a wonderful day. Why yes, this thing is amazing. This thing is so miraculously good and just wonderful. You could say it's the best thing since sliced bread.